Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 6 of season 2 of Babylon 5, A Spider in the Web. Sheridan is enjoying delegating the day-to-day tasks to Ivanova, it seems. Elsewhere, Future Corps are looking to expand to Mars from Earth, but Talia seems to think their plans are risky. Haven't seen her a lot this season. She clearly has history with this businessman, Mr. Isogi, and they have an affectionate relationship. Then Amanda Carter arrives representing Mars, so the meeting can begin. I think I recognise her from a Swamp Thing movie. John Carter was her, grandfather, and he piloted the first colony ship to Mars. Flattery 101 it seems, know your enemy. Also probably named for the Edgar Rice Burroughs character associated with the Red Planet. In the San Diego wastelands on Earth, possibly a physical model shot unusually, a President Clark fan orders an operation to commence when her console tells her that all the components have arrived on Babylon 5 and control is online. Nope, I've got nothing to. But back on the station, it looks like some Earth Alliance classified cargo wants to stretch its legs. So, it turns out an Earth senator is not impressed that this business meeting is happening, as Amanda Carter is a pro-Martian independence and a member of the Provisional Martian Government. The senator is claiming that Future Corps would fund another rebellion in order to make the current trade deal company leave Mars, opening the way for Future Corps to take their place. Sheridan is less than impressed by being ordered to surveil the negotiation, which, as the station is neutral, goes against its charter. Carter and Isogi's meeting is going quite well, it seems. He believes trade with the alien races can give Mars an economic way to independence in about 10 years, and they all have representatives on Babylon 5 with whom to work out the deals, hence the reason for the location of the meeting. Carter is somewhat suspect, but interested. Isogi invites Talia to dinner to discuss his plans in more detail. It turns out that Sheridan made first contact with the Takar delegation who Ivanova made flawless arrangements for earlier. They came across them in an uncharted sector and played follow the leader for a while before the Agamemnon's teams were able to get a grasp of their language. Apparently Jovian sunspots are a drink Sheridan enjoys. He found their starship and their species wondrous. Talia is walking with Isogi, discussing his plans, when they are suddenly accosted by a man who says "Free Mars," and then grasps Isogi by the neck, discharging electricity as he does so. Talia is cast aside onto the floor and instinctively scans the killer, seeing a glimpse of what looks like a shattering canopy and an Earth Alliance Omega-class destroyer. The killer seems almost puzzled by this, and then simply walks away, saying nothing. Talia holds Isogi, but he's already gone. Talia and Sheridan have a heated exchange as he reveals the senator's suspicions, which run completely contrary to the man Talia knew Isogi to be, who wanted only prosperity for Mars, the right way. She doesn't understand the killer. She'd encountered Free Mars zealots during her time on Mars, and they were always full of hate for Earth, but she sensed no emotion from this killer. To her, the whole situation makes no sense, but she knows this was a lost opportunity for a peaceful road to Martian independence. Garibaldi escorts Talia back to her quarters, half hitting on her, but also making her laugh, which she needed. The killer is walking the Zocalo and uses a public terminal to make contact with what might be an AI that spoke in San Diego, reporting Phase 1 complete and revealing a cybernetic hand in downloading the details of the attack to the AI. The AI considers for a moment, then orders him to kill Talia before moving on to Phase 2. Sheridan orders outbound traffic halted and asks Ivanova what she thinks of Talia, who Susan describes as interesting. Turns out Sheridan is familiar with Ivanova's dislike for telepaths, having seen her throw one out of a third-floor window on Io. Fortunately, there was a pool below, which she may or may not have been aware of. She says Sheridan can trust Talia as an individual, even if neither trusts Psy-Corps as an organisation. Sheridan visits Carter, who refuses to discuss her negotiations, and appears genuinely shocked to hear that Isogi has been killed, as no one should have known where they were meeting. Like Talia, she maintains that Free Mars would have had no interest in killing him, but the Senate and the incumbent corporate on Mars would have disliked his plans for a peaceful resolution of the Mars situation if it meant an independent Mars, which of course it did. Garibaldi says that whatever killed Ahsoka was extremely powerful and possibly a prosthetic, beyond the slaver's glove we saw an example of in Born to the Purple. What he can't understand is how something that powerful could have gotten onto the station without detection. Sheridan clearly has his suspicions at this point, so he orders the escort on Talia maintained and secure Earth Alliance areas on the station searched. Unfortunately, Talia's escort gets fried shortly thereafter, but as she scans the killer again, he seems to pause and come to his senses, and we see the Omega opening fire on him again. He questions what's been done to him as Talia makes a break for it. Talia tells Sheridan that the man died in that engagement, yet he's clinging to this thought of his final moment as if it's the only thought he has. Garibaldi has an ID, Abel Horn, a leader of the Free Mars movement, responsible for the deaths of people Sheridan and his wife knew on Mars, amongst others. Sheridan wants him, but apparently he wants a dead man. His ship was destroyed over Phobos in 2258, as Talia has seen, which suggests it might have been during the rebellion that was taking place during A Voice in the Wilderness in Season 1. Abel is waiting for Carter in her quarters. Seemingly his orders aren't to kill her, but possibly to incriminate or blackmail her because she was once Free Mars too. However, as it becomes apparent he might be about to strike after all, he starts to fight his programming, becoming desperate to see Talia again because she might be able to unlock whatever's been done to him. Garibaldi is securing Talia, then having a cup of tea with her, while Sheridan starts to allow ships off the station before Susan starts spacing their captains. Garibaldi speaks very fondly of his father to Talia, to take her mind off the situation. No small feat when you're trying to distract a telepath, I imagine. She didn't know her parents. She was raised by Psychor from age 5. Some nice new Fury shots getting thrown into the establishing shot mix here. Sheridan has uncovered a Project Lazarus in his quarters, ostensibly a failed experiment to hardwire a computer into a near-dead human's brain, combined with telepathic deep scans to make them relive the moment of their death to keep their subconscious ticking over, whilst the computer has control of their body. Thought abandoned in the 2230s, Sheridan explains all this to a sceptical Garibaldi, who questions why such a thing would have left Talia alive. Sheridan reasons that she awoke something in Abel when she scanned him, that disrupted his programming enough that he could break free. Carter sets up a meeting with Talia, but Abel then knocks her out. Neither Sheridan nor Garibaldi can get the internal sensors to track a radiation signature Abel might be emitting. Talia heads to her meeting with Carter under heavy escort, which Garibaldi joins. Sheridan gets his scan underway finally, but Abel is already in the meeting room and unfortunately none of the escort go in with Talia. Abel forces her to scan him, and she reveals images of a psychop overseeing his augmentation operation, telling him he was dying and they rebuilt him. Sheridan's scan completes, and he realises Abel is in with Talia. Garibaldi rolls in, but Abel gets Talia as a hostage. The team have to disarm, and Abel gets a PPG, but Sheridan arrives and tries to reason with him, saying he's died enough already, and they can try and find out who did this to him together. Abel has other ideas, and makes out he's gone full Free Mars, opening fire. Sheridan is still armed, and shoots him in self-defense, for which Abel thanks him. Zach Allen scans him, and reports that there's a dangerous energy surge building. Sheridan and the team just make it clear before he blows, because there's now no hard evidence of what Abel was. Carter and Sheridan strike a deal in MedLab. He won't reveal her previous Free Mars association, albeit from a time when they were non-violent, if she will pursue Ahsoka's plan for a non-violent path to Martian independence. Garibaldi thinks Sheridan's mad, but Talia explains Carter wasn't helping Abel, he just wanted her to scan him to try and find out what had been done to him. Critically, she doesn't tell Sheridan about the presence of the Psychop, she just says she saw an operation. So she betrayed Susan's trust and protected the core. Garibaldi would like to know how Sheridan knew about the Lazarus Project. It turns out his hobby isn't old coins, it's secrets. And Garibaldi acknowledges that Sheridan doesn't trust him like Sinclair did, but he needs to know if there's a threat to the station. Sheridan says it's beyond that, that for 6 years he's had reports of a dirty tricks star chamber organisation within Earth Dome that it took him 3 years to get a name for, Bureau 13. Sheridan sees them as a spider in the web, one that he intends to kill to protect what Earth should stand for. In the Bureau 13 office in San Diego, the AI doesn't believe that the Bureau has been compromised by the failure of the mission, but the Psycop we saw earlier is revealed as the human operative who says that he must follow up until their security is beyond doubt, which suggests Abel wasn't the only agent on board. Talia is also investigating, and apparently the Psycop she saw is listed as deceased, but then so is Abel, of course. I didn't remember all the detail of this one, but there really is a lot of detail to be had here. One thing that struck me rewatching it now is that Star Trek has a Section 31. Here we have a Bureau 13, 3113. I won't dive into the whole DS9 as a rip-off of Babylon 5 debate, in part because I haven't read JMS's treatise on this in Becoming Superman, but having seen Star Trek Discovery and some DS9 reruns of late, this just came popping into my head. I think I would describe this as being a very dense episode of the show, in terms of the speed at which it moves and the layers that are woven into it. This is one of the episodes where you benefit from having seen Season 1, because you'd recall that a Mars Rebellion was a significant secondary plotline for Garibaldi and Talia prior to this, and it's been established that both have history with duty on Mars. I think the Isogi-Talia relationship is a little clunky, because we haven't really gotten the sense of Psy-Corps members having terribly normal relationships with people because of suspicion of telepaths amongst normals, so I felt this needed a little more explanation. The speed of the episode is such that we have to pick up those pieces as it runs at such pace, and often after he's been deep fried. I guess you could come up with any number of real-world analogies for a would-be freedom fighter turned by-the-book politician on a quest for legitimate independence from the oppressive motherland, and Carter is clearly positioned in that particular slot, which gives Sheridan the ability to try and force her down a particular path. It's clear that if Abel did want to get back into free Mars, her helping him would have been a blow to the provisional government's legitimacy, and possibly have allowed him to destroy free Mars into the bargain. It's somewhat ironic that Talia's involvement is what throws a spanner in the works, given that there is clearly some degree of Psy-Corps support for the operation. But equally, very interesting that her allegiance is not with Sheridan but with the Corps when she has an opportunity to incriminate them. That's very interesting for us as the viewer, because we know that Susan has vouched for her, and yet here there is clear evidence that given a choice between the Corps and station personnel, she might support the Corps. Swapping early life stories with Garibaldi, it's clear that the Corps indoctrinate you very early, possibly with telepathic reinforcement from the first year handlers, so she may be almost instinctively programmed like Abel to act in the best interests of the Corps. Sheridan's Black Ops hobby could clearly be the source of other interesting stories down the line, but I think what really stood out for me in this episode was how much more settled and comfortable in his own skin he now appears as compared to where he started the season. He and Ivanova are clearly working well together, and he's building more of a rapport with Garibaldi too. It's well-played character growth inside of a few episodes, and it's nice to see him hitting his stride. This is a wholly Earth-Mars focused episode, and that's interesting because where last episode we were considering matters on the Rim and mysterious alien warriors, now we're pulled back far closer to home and focus on the core characters with just a touch of light relief here and there. There's political intrigue in Sheridan being bossed by a senator, there's mystery in respect to what Bureau 13 might be up to, and whether it's supported by Psy-Corps as a whole or just some splinter Psycops. There's the question of the future direction of Mars politically, and what role Babylon 5 might play in that future. Does this episode work? Honestly, I'm not sure. I understand what it was aiming for, bringing the Mars background more to the fore, but I think we needed a more gentle introduction to that somehow, because it's apparent there's a lot of history there we're not privy to, and all of a sudden we're being introduced very rapidly to the idea that a corporate entity could play a massive role in the standing of Mars. It's not quite clear how that could happen, but it's clearly not something that the powers that be want to see changing away from the status quo. Then we have Robo-Martian bouncing into the mix to kill this guy out of the blue, while a wibbly-wobbly pattern on a computer screen issues him with instructions. This is probably a bit of a Marmite episode, You either love it or hate it. You either roll with it or it's just a bit too much. Interestingly, and I don't think this is canon, the writer thought Bureau 13 might have been behind the knights who interrogated Sinclair in And the Sky Full of Stars. I'm not sure that gels, because this episode suggests Bureau 13 could have gotten the power source onto the station in a clandestine fashion, which was an issue for the knights. I wouldn't necessarily rule it out as a possibility, I suppose. Equally, you could argue that Bureau 13 would have been better off using a more stable agent with a changing net, but I suppose using someone like Abel had the benefit of Earth Alliance involvement being hard to demonstrate. Plus, the changing net plus self-destruct were of course used in the gathering. So, did this episode give you arachnophobia, or leave a nasty mess on the wall? Let me know.